What's good, peeps? This is a Boxing Social Green Chair Productions link-up.
Without the green chair.
Without the green chair, which is so disappointing. Although there were some green chairs around, but we kept on getting moved. But we're here, myself, Adi Ladipo, you know that man is. Andy's doing amazing stuff for Boxing Social. Shout out to Ryan, by the way, who's just hooked up, literally done all this for us. All this little set. We've got a camera there, got this camera, we've got the shotgun mic. Andy, welcome to the channel. First time on.
I know, man. Was it not? We've been talking about doing something for a while, so it's good to be on.
And it's weird because you always come up to me and say, Adi, you're so busy, you're everywhere.
Yeah.
You're everywhere. Tell us about your itinerary for the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks. What are you doing?
I'm glad you've only said 3 or 4 weeks, because it's not planned. So this week in Manchester, go back on Sunday.
Yeah.
Got 1 day at home, and then going to Fury White from Tuesday to Sunday. Staying over 1 day in London at Heathrow, flying to New York for Taylor Serrano, and then to Vegas the following Monday for Canelo Bivol. Then back, and I think I'm doing the Boxer show on the 14th in Manchester again. And then one of Buatsi, Richards or Parker after that, I'm not sure.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And okay, you know, this is a good question actually. So like here, you've been here for like, what, 3 days come fight night, right?
Yeah.
So 3 days. How many interviews within those 3 days would you say you do?
I'd like to think between 15 to 20 as a minimum.
Jeez.
But I'm trying to add it up now. I think I've probably only done maybe a dozen so far this week.
So far?
Yeah.
There's more to come.
Yeah, there's more to come. Yeah,
I'm
working on a couple more. So
See, Ebony Bridges is here as well.
I've reached out to her.
Yeah. So
Definitely.
you'll get that one done.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, let's talk about a big fight stateside. Errol Spence versus Yordenis Ugas. I normally do these by myself, so it's good to have someone with me as well. Massive unification fight. I've wanted to get this video done for a while. I've just been super busy, as you guys know. But it's good that we can chat about it now because, look, I've titled the video One More Hurdle, and this is no disrespect to Ugas, who I think is a fantastic fighter. But if you're a boxing fan, there's no doubt in your mind you want to see Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford. We are hearing that Terence Crawford is going to sign a deal with PBC, so we could be getting closer. But I say one more hurdle. This is a massive hurdle for Errol Spence. Yordenis Ugas is legit.
No, 100%. It's not something that he can take lightly. You know, I saw him against Manny Pacquiao.
Was he there for that?
Yeah.
Jeez,
so
man.
I'm a lucky boy to watch. Hopefully he doesn't come back because you'd like him to go out on his legacy. But granted, he was an old and not the same version of Manny Pacquiao as everybody's seen, but it's still a ring legend and one of Yordenis' toughest tests in his career. The one which people go back to is the Porter fight. Many people thought he beat Sean Porter and just didn't get the rub of the green. So it's a difficult fight, and also I think people can't forget, you know, Spence came back after his car crash, fought Danny Garcia, beat him, and then he's had his eye injuries, which meant that he had to pull out of what was meant to be the Pacquiao fight, and nobody knows how his eye could hold up.
We don't know.
This fight.
We have no idea.
There's a lot of factors which people have to kind of factor in. You still lean towards Spence, but like I say, all these different factors you have to kind of think about. It's not going to be.
It's interesting, right? Because again, prior to the crash, if this was a matchup, you'd have leaned heavily towards Errol. And now, although he's had that fight against Danny Garcia, and I actually thought he looked very good against Danny Garcia, Errol, especially considering coming off the back of a crash. But he's not had any fights since then. Errol looks big.
Yeah.
Errol looks really big. I saw a photo of him and I was like, it looked like this is the guy that might struggle to make weight. I mean, he looked really big and like muscular, ripped as well.
I've seen a lot of people suggest that if he doesn't get Crawford after Ugas provided he's successful, he's up to 154 vacates for those titles. So it wouldn't surprise me. He's always been quite big for that weight, but now, especially on the back of that lack of activity through those various reasons, you can certainly understand.
At least he's living the life now, as opposed to what it was before when we used to see him behind the scenes with the Charlos and Gervonta Davis and Broner. It looked like he was just doing nonsense. Now, because of the accidents, and I think he spoke about another accident as well that he had, fingers crossed he's now fully focused on the job. How big an upset would it be if Ugas were to win? Like, are you waking up Sunday morning and thinking, oh my God? Or is it a case of, you know, because you've just said you're leaning towards Errol, but not heavily. So is it a big upset then?
It wouldn't be a huge, it would be an upset. It wouldn't be a huge upset. I think the thing that certainly boxing fans would be in the back of the mind of is they're going to be thinking they've just lost the Spence Crawford fight.
And we always lose fights. We always lose fights,
And like you said, you know, there's those talks about a potential 2-fight deal being in place for Crawford to sign with PBC. So if Spence was to lose and you lose that, you always kind of look back and think, what would have happened if they had met?
Does Errol not get the credit he deserves? You know, like when I think Terence is the best 147 pounder, and others do as well. But then you look at the CVs of the two, and it's Errol that's beaten the guys. It's Errol beat a better Sean, even though it was a tough one to beat better Sean. Beat Danny, came over here and beat Kell Brook. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I'm beating Kell Brook at 147. Yes, coming down from 160. I sometimes feel like when we speak about Errol, and everyone does their pound for pound list, and you know, it's almost like you've got your 5, and Errol's around 6 or 7. I don't know if he gets the credit he deserves.
I could probably agree with that, and it's funny you're mentioning kind of the CVs, and you say Crawford's number 1 at 147. I'm sure you've had this conversation with Rob before. Rob always used to say...
Rob hates the fact, because Rob looks at his CV and is like, how?
At
and why are you saying
nothing,
it's nothing there, it doesn't exist,
And that's Rob's argument at 147. With the exception of Porter most recently, Crawford's CV doesn't stack up compared to...
Dude, it's weak,
So I agree, I don't think Spencer's had the credit that he deserves, but again, I think it just all comes down to, beats Ugas, and he sets up that Crawford fight.
And then that's it. I actually think it could be that for both of them at 154, especially when you've got guys like Jaron Ennis coming through, who, look, it's a risk-reward thing. Why fight Jaron Ennis right now? He brings nothing to the table. Virgil Ortiz is hungry. Again, why fight them? So I think for both, it's the final fight, if, obviously, providing Errol Spence gets past Ugas. Prediction, who do you think wins it?
I go Spence points.
Yeah.
I think it's a game.
Stop knocking people out.
No, that's it. And
stop knocking people out. It's weird, because everyone looks at him as the power puncher, the body puncher, and hasn't put anyone to sleep for 8. I actually can't remember the last person he did knock out.
Oh, don't put me on the spot now.
Ryan, who's the last person that Errol Spence stopped?
Brooke.
Is it that long ago?
For those who aren't here, we're debating this and we're thinking it might be Brooke, because I can't remember.
I think it could be Brooke, and that might be about 5-6 fights ago. Yeah, he didn't stop Mikey, didn't stop Danny, didn't stop Sean.
He should have put a foot on the gas.
Carlos Ocampo. Yeah, that don't count. That don't count. Not saying that because we look at him as like the biggest and the strongest and the most powerful welterweight, but no stoppages on there, so I'm with you. I think he gets the job done. He only has a Sunday morning, but I think it's points. I think it's a points one, and then fingers crossed we move on to Terence. If you're Terence, surely you're thinking I need a fight in between, or do you just wait? He's not fought since Sean. Do you then wait it out and then fight Errol?
No, he needs to have a fight regardless, because if Errol wins, let's say Errol wins and he looks spectacular, whether it's points or stoppage, no matter what it is, the last thing you want if you're Terence going into the biggest fight of his career
is a year off.
Yeah. Like he needs to fight somebody, and really needs to fight he needs to fight a top 10 fight. I'd love to see that fight.
Yeah. That's the one we want.
Yeah, I'd love to see that fight.
Keith Thurman versus Terence Crawford. And if you're Keith as well, and look, his last fight done awful numbers, like really bad. In order to justify the money that they're going to give him, he needs a fight that does good numbers. Keith versus Terence does good numbers.
100%.
Chuck it on pay-per-view, it does good numbers, and it leads into the sell. And to be fair, as much as I'm saying Terence should be fighting Errol, if Keith wins, Keith versus Errol's a big fight.
Yeah. Oh, mate, that'd be huge.
Yeah, indeed. Let's talk about the fight that's going here tomorrow night. Conor Benn versus Van Heerden. When this fight got announced, let's be honest, lukewarm. No, we can be brutally honest. Not many people were like... You can always tell from social media. People jumping it immediately like, rubbish. And I almost feel like I kind of defended it by saying, look, Conor, I think people forget, like, barely any amateur experience. Like, none. Like, a handful of fights as an amateur. I think 15 or something like that. So that's more than a handful, don't get me wrong, it's another hand. But around 15 amateur fights. This is the last one for me, and then it needs to go. But I'm okay with another one like this. I don't mind. Sorry, this one, sorry. Yeah.
I think that's the issue. Like you said, granted he's had no amateur experience, but he's just thrived through the pandemic with the performances he's put in. Granted, the Granadas one, it wasn't a great performance, but not because of his own doing, it's because of the performance Granadas put in.
He was just, coming off the back of COVID as well, I think he had as well,
And I just think Conor needs that step up now, and with no disrespect to Van Heerden, especially looking at him throughout the week, he's looked a bit old, he's looked frail, and he looks like he's there for...
that's
there to look good
taking.
On Saturday.
100%. Look, he brings his own issues in the fact that he's a southpaw. He's obviously more experienced than Conor. So I think the southpaw for the first couple of rounds, Conor will be trying to work him out. But Conor should run through a Van Heerden at this stage of Van Heerden's career. And then it's the case of what next. Eddie, when I spoke to him the other day, mentioned 4 names: Mikey Garcia, Danny, Kell Brook, Adrian Broner. If you had your pick of those 4 for Conor, what First, let's do it this way. What's the bigger fight out of all four? The bigger financial rewarding fight out of all four?
Big one at Brook without
Brook?
a shadow of a doubt, because you
Broner could do numbers over here though. But Brook, I'm with you. I think it is Brook. But I think Broner will come and sell that fight better than any of them.
But then Broner's numbers for his last fight in the US were horrendous.
Not great, yeah.
And I just think that Brook fight in the UK would sell out VO2
immediately. By the way. Immediately, yeah.
You could look at a smaller stadium for that, you know,
yeah.
because I definitely think that could do decent numbers.
Okay, so that's the financial rewarding fight, and if I'm if I'm Brook and Conor, that's what I go for. By the way, what's the bigger fight in terms of sort of the resume, the legacy, like building it, that next step to a top 10 guy? Mikey? Mikey's coming off a loss.
I'd argue the Danny Garcia fight.
I think Danny's bloody
I think that's the tougher fight out of all of them. That's the toughest.
Like if that fight was made tomorrow, and Conor, I know you're gonna, Adi, stop going against me. If that fight's made tomorrow, I'd go Danny.
Yeah, you'd lean Danny on the back
like,
of what he's so far.
Yeah, like Danny doesn't look like there's a lot of wear and tear left. Yeah. I think Danny pretty good. Andy, final one. I like putting you on the spot because you don't normally do this. Yeah. You're normally the guy that on the other side. Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte coming up. I'm not going to ask you for prediction. I think that's unfair because I know you interview both. But in terms of just the magnitude of the fight, 94,000 Wembley Stadium, I never thought Tyson Fury could fight anyone that wasn't named AJ and do that.
It's a surprise just to see, but it just shows you firstly what the heavyweight division can do and just how much people want to see Tyson back. And Dillian, though, gotta give him credit, like he's a big name in British boxing. Massive. It is also, like he said in the Zoom press conference yesterday, it's not just the Tyson Fury roadshow. People want to see Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte. He's selling it just as much from not talking. Thankfully,
in a weird way, that kind of works.
Yeah,
I'm with you. Like, look, I want him to talk and I want him to go on social media. He's going to do the final press conference, but because he's not spoken, it's almost done the opposite of what I thought it would do. Yeah, look, BT don't have the Sky machine, so it can't be everywhere, and you want them to do a bit more promotion, but I think the fight does good numbers. I think the fight could get 600,000 to 700,000. I'm with that figure. I think it could do that.
I think it easily gets in. I would probably say about 8 to 9.
Ooh.
I think people will definitely want to be tuning in. It's just such a massive fight, and it's just because of what could lead beyond that as well. Like you always think about down the line, save Tyson and save Tyson. I shouldn't give a prediction, but I edge Tyson like most people do. Yeah. Tyson comes through and say if he looks sensational again, then you're already licking your lips at what could be next.
Yeah, you're like, come on, Usyk, AJ, Uwena. This is so tough for me because I'm a big AJ fan, but again, you've got to lean towards Usyk. Yeah. But if AJ were to come through it and you get a Fury AJ fight, there's not a stadium in the world big enough. Like, you could have a stadium that could do. I think I remember someone telling me that Fury White online, there's 170,000 people in the queue for tickets. I think it reached, or maybe even 200. There could be, this is no joke, 500,000 in the queue for AJ Fury. Could be 500,000.
I'm just worrying about those resale ticket values. Like,
you're alright because you get accreditation.
I hope so. Listen, I think people
you're Andy from Boxing Social. I think you're okay. Andy, honestly, you're doing a crazy job. Not just yourself, but obviously Ryan doing stuff as well. Rob Temmett come back as well. I mean, Andy's doing great. The team's doing great, but it'd be good to see Rob Temmett back. But you're doing an amazing job, dude. What you do is not easy.
Just before we go there, I just want to say, going back to what we were speaking about last night, I'm so happy to see obviously like how your career's gone since.
Yeah, it's what it is.
AJ Ruiz obviously with Sky, TalkSport, now DAZN, and it's been brilliant to see.
No, it's been fun as well. I've enjoyed it. Pressure, there is pressure on it, and what the biggest pressure I think comes from is because I do my green chair stuff, and I want to still remain that guy on the green chair, but then at the same time I then go and have to interview the fighters. It's so difficult.
So you're becoming a company man.
Yeah. And on that note, Johnny Nelson will leave the building.